The Orion Deep Space Research Station was quiet at 3 in the morning. Most workers were asleep. The lights in the hallways were dim. Only the soft hum of machines filled the air. Kim Tai-ho pushed his cleaning cart through the empty corridors. He was 58 years old. His hair was gray. His back hurt from years of work. But he moved with care, checking every corner, every room. He had worked as a custodian on this station for 12 years. He knew every pipe, every vent, every forgotten storage room. Tonight, his route took him to the waste disposal bay. It was the lowest level of the station. Nobody came here except him. The room was large and cold. Broken equipment waited to be recycled. Old containers sat in tall stacks. Tae-ho stopped his cart near the door. He pulled out his mop and began to clean the floor. The work was simple. His mind wandered to memories of his wife. She had died 5 years ago. Cancer. He still talked to her sometimes in his head. He told her about his day, about the stars outside the station windows, about how much he missed her cooking. A sound broke his thoughts. It was soft, like metal scraping against metal. Tae-ho looked up. He listened. The sound came again. It came from the far corner of the bay, behind a wall of old cargo containers. He should call security. That was the rule. Unknown sounds meant unknown danger. But Tae-ho had heard many sounds in 12 years. Usually it was nothing. A loose panel, a small animal that had escaped from the biology labs. He walked toward the sound. His footsteps echoed in the empty bay. He moved around the containers one by one. The light was weak here. Shadows covered everything. Then he saw it. A small escape pod. It was wedged between two large containers. The pod was damaged. Burn marks covered its surface. One side was crushed. The emergency lights on its hull blinked red. Weak and dying. Tae-ho had seen escape pods before, but never one like this. The design was strange. The metal was a color he did not recognize. This was not human technology. He stepped closer. The pod's window was cracked but not broken. He wiped the dust away with his sleeve and looked inside. His heart stopped. A child. There was a child inside. She was small, maybe the size of a 10-year-old human girl. But she was not human. Her skin was pale silver, almost white. Her hair was long and dark blue like deep ocean water. Her eyes were closed. Her body was curled into a ball. Arms wrapped around her knees. She was not moving. Tae-ho's hands shook as he searched for a way to open the pod. He found a manual release handle on the side. He pulled it. Nothing happened. He pulled harder. The metal groaned. Finally, with a hiss of escaping air, the pod door cracked open. Cold air rushed out. The child's skin was like ice. Tae-ho pressed his fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse. He did not know if her species had pulses. He did not know anything about her species. But then he felt it. A faint beat. Slow. Weak. But there. She was alive. Protocol said he should report this immediately. Protocol said he should not touch unknown alien life forms. Protocol said he should wait for trained professionals. But she was so small, so cold, so alone. Tae-ho took off his jacket. It was old and worn, the same jacket he had worn for years. He wrapped it around the child carefully. She weighed almost nothing. Her bones felt thin and fragile, like they might break if he held her too tight. He lifted her from the pod and held her against his chest. Her body was stiff and cold. He could feel her shallow breathing against his shoulder. He did not call security. He did not call the medical bay. Instead, he carried her through the dark corridors of the station to a small storage room near the hydroponics section. It was warm there. The heat from the plant growing lights kept the room comfortable. He had spent many breaks here, drinking tea and reading old books. He laid the child on a pile of soft cleaning cloths. He found a heating unit and placed it near her. He wrapped more cloths around her body. Then he sat beside her on the cold floor. He did not know what else to do, so he held her hand. Her hand was small, 4 fingers instead of 5. The skin was smooth and cool. He held it gently, trying to share his warmth with her. Hours passed. Tae-ho did not sleep. He watched her face for any sign of change. He talked to her softly, even though he knew she could not understand. He told her about his wife, about how they had met in a small village in Korea, about how she had loved flowers, about how she had made him feel less alone in the world. He told the child that she was safe now, that he would not let anything hurt her, that she was not alone anymore. The station began to wake up. He could hear distant footsteps, distant voices. Soon someone would notice he was missing from his route. Soon questions would be asked. But he did not move. He stayed beside her, holding her hand. As the artificial morning light began to brighten the corridors outside, the child moved. Just a small movement. Her fingers twitched inside his hand. Taeho leaned closer. He held his breath. Her eyes opened. They were large and beautiful, the color of purple galaxies with small points of light that seemed to float inside them, like stars. They were filled with fear and confusion. She looked around the strange room. She saw the metal walls, the stacked containers, the dim lights. Then her eyes found Taeho. She saw an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. She saw a face full of worry and kindness. She saw a stranger who was holding her hand as if she was the most precious thing in the universe. She did not know his language. She did not know his species. She did not know where she was or how she had gotten there. But something in her heart, something deeper than words or thought, told her that this person would not hurt her. This person was safe. Taeho smiled at her. It was a small smile, gentle and warm. The child did not smile back. She was too weak, too scared. But she did not pull her hand away. And in that cold, forgotten storage room, at the edge of known space, something new began. Not with grand speeches or historic meetings, but with a simple act. An old janitor held a dying child's hand through the night, and when she opened her eyes, he was still there. That was enough. For now, that was enough. The child would not let go of Taeho's hand. For 3 days, she held on to him whenever he was near. If he tried to leave, even for a moment, her grip would tighten. Her strange purple eyes would fill with panic. So he stayed. He slept on the floor beside her. He ate his meals with one hand. He only left when she finally fell into deep sleep, and even then, only for minutes at a time. Her name, he learned later, was Lyra. But in those first days, she was just the child to him, the small, frightened girl who had fallen from the stars into his care. Lyra was terrified of everything. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow made her press closer to Taeho. The station's machines hummed and beeped constantly, and each noise seemed to hurt her ears. She would cover them with her thin hands and squeeze her eyes shut. But what confused Taeho most was that she never spoke. Not a single word. Not even a cry. He tried talking to her in Korean. He tried simple English, the common language of the station. He pointed at things and said their names slowly. Water, food, light. She watched his mouth move with great interest, but she never tried to copy him. On the 4th day, he understood why. He was showing her a picture book he had found in the station's small library. It was a children's book about animals on Earth. Dogs, cats, birds, fish. Lyra touched each picture with wonder. When they reached a page showing a parrot, Taeho made a squawking sound to imitate the bird. Lyra's eyes went wide. Then something amazing happened. Her skin began to glow. Soft patterns of light appeared on her arms and face. Blues and greens and soft purples, moving like gentle waves across her silver skin. The patterns changed and shifted, forming shapes that almost looked like symbols. Taeho stared in amazement. He had never seen anything like it. Lyra pointed at her glowing skin, then at her throat, then shook her head. She opened her mouth and pointed inside. Nothing came out. No sound. She touched her throat again and made a sad face. She could not speak with her voice. Her species communicated through light. Taeho sat back and thought about this. How could he talk to someone who spoke with colors instead of sounds? He was an old janitor. He did not know anything about alien languages or communication technology, but he was patient, and he was stubborn. His wife had always said those were his best qualities. He found paper and colored pencils. He drew a simple picture of himself. Then he pointed at the drawing and said his name. Taeho, he pointed at himself. Taeho. Lyra watched carefully. Then she touched her own chest. Her skin glowed with a specific pattern. 3 soft pulses of pale blue light. Taeho, he said again, pointing at himself. 3 pulses of blue light. She was saying his name. In her language, Kim Taeho was 3 pulses of blue. He drew a picture of her next. Small body, long hair, big eyes. He pointed at the drawing, then at her, then tilted his head in question. Her skin glowed differently this time. 2 pulses of soft pink, followed by 1 pulse of white. Lyra? Tejo guessed, making up sounds for the colors. She seemed to think about this. Then she nodded slowly. She liked the sound he had made. From that moment on, she was Lyra. Dr. Park Suman found them on the 5th day. She was the chief xenobiologist of the station, 42 years old with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. She had been searching for the source of strange energy readings in the lower sections. The readings led her to Tai-Ho's hidden storage room. When she opened the door and saw the old janitor sitting cross-legged on the floor, teaching an alien child to draw with colored pencils, she did not know whether to scream or laugh. She did neither. Instead, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "Do you know what you have done?" she asked quietly. Her voice was cold. "Do you have any idea what protocols you have broken?" Tejo looked up at her calmly. She was dying. She is an unknown alien life form. She could be carrying diseases. She could be dangerous. You should have reported this immediately. She was alone, Tejo said simply. I could not leave her alone. Suman stared at him. She had worked with scientists and soldiers and politicians. She had met people from dozens of species across the galaxy. But she had never met anyone quite like this old man, who spoke about galactic protocols as if they were less important than a child's loneliness. Lyra pressed herself against Tejo's side, her skin flickering with fearful patterns. She could sense the tension in the room. She could not understand the words, but she understood the doctor's angry tone. Tejo put his arm around her. "It is okay," he said softly to Lyra. "She is not going to hurt you." He looked back at Suman. "She cannot speak with her voice. Her people talk with light, with colors on their skin. I have been trying to learn her words. She is smart, and very scared." Suman watched the child's glowing skin. Her scientific mind was already analyzing, categorizing, forming theories. But another part of her, a part she had buried long ago under years of professional distance, saw something else. She saw a little girl, holding on to an old man's arm like he was the only safe thing in the universe. "I have to report this," Suman said finally. "The captain needs to know. The medical team needs to examine her. Will they take her away from me?" The question was simple, but something in Tejo's voice made Suman pause. There was no anger in it, no demand, just quiet concern, like a father asking about his daughter. "I do not know," she admitted. Tejo nodded slowly. He looked down at Lyra, who was watching the conversation with wide, confused eyes. He smoothed her dark blue hair with his rough hand. "Please," he said to Suman, "give us more time. Let me teach her. Let me help her feel safe. She has lost everything. I do not know where she came from or what happened to her. But I know she is afraid, and I know that fear does not heal quickly." Suman should have refused. Every rule she knew demanded that she refuse. But she looked at Tejo's worn face, at his gentle hands, at the way the alien child leaned into him with complete trust. She thought about why she had become a doctor in the first place. Not for rules, not for protocols, for people, for the hope of healing. "1 week," she said finally. "I will give you 1 week before I make my report. But I will come every day to check on her health, and if anything goes wrong, anything at all, I will call security immediately." Tejo bowed his head. "Thank you." Suman turned to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care so much? You do not know her. She is not even human." Tejo thought about the question. He thought about his wife, who had taught him that love was not about blood or species or logic. Love was about choosing to care, even when it was hard. "Because she needed someone," he said finally, "and I was there." Suman had no answer for that. She left without another word. But that night, for the first time in years, she dreamed about the small clinic in Busan where she had treated her first patient. A scared little boy with a broken arm. She had held his hand while setting the bone, talking to him about silly things to distract him from the pain. She had forgotten that feeling, the simple joy of helping someone who was scared. The old janitor had reminded her. Dr. Park Suman had been studying Lyra for 2 weeks. She had learned many things about the child's species. They were called the Velani. They lived on a planet far away, in a system near the edge of the galaxy. Their bodies were delicate. Their bones were made of something like crystal. They were peaceful people, known for their beautiful art and their advanced machines. Suman searched the station's database for more information. She sent messages to other research stations. She contacted the Coalition Council, the governing body that connected all the species in the known galaxy. The response came back in pieces, fragments of terrible news. The Velani homeworld was gone. 3 months ago, their son had died. It happened suddenly without warning. The star had collapsed and the explosion had destroyed everything nearby. The Velani had tried to escape. Ships had launched in every direction, carrying survivors. But space was vast and cold, and help was far away. Most of the ships never made it. The Coalition had found only a few hundred Velani still alive, scattered across distant stations and planets. Out of billions of people, only hundreds remained. Lyra was one of the last of her kind. Suman did not know how to tell the child. She did not even know if Lyra understood what death meant, or planets, or stars. But the girl deserved to know. She had a right to know. They told her together, Sumin and Taiho. They used simple pictures, a drawing of a planet, a drawing of a sun, a drawing of the sun growing bright, too bright, and then nothing. Darkness. Lyra watched the pictures with her large purple eyes. At first, she did not react. She simply stared at the drawings, her face empty. Then understanding came. The light in her skin went out. All of it, every glow, every pattern, every soft color simply disappeared. Her silver skin became gray and dull, like stone. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. She rocked back and forth slowly, silently. Taiho reached for her hand. She did not take it. She did not look at him. She just rocked and rocked, lost in a grief too big for her small body. Suman's eyes filled with tears. She had delivered bad news before many times. But this was different. This child had lost not just her family, but her entire world, her entire people. Everything she had ever known was now dust and darkness. "What do we do?" Suman whispered to Taiho. The old man's face was heavy with sadness, but his voice was calm. "We stay with her." For 3 days, Lyra did not eat. She barely moved. She sat in the corner of the storage room, curled into a ball, her skin dark and lightless. Taiho sat beside her the entire time. He did not try to make her eat. He did not try to make her talk. He just sat there, a quiet presence in her darkness. He thought about his wife, about the months after she died, when he could not get out of bed, when food tasted like nothing, when the world seemed gray and pointless. He had wanted to give up then. He had wanted to disappear, but he had kept going. Not because he was strong, not because he was brave, but because of small things. The way the sun came through his window in the morning, the smell of coffee, the small mint plant his wife had grown in their kitchen. He had kept watering that plant day after day, even when everything else felt meaningless. And slowly, very slowly, the gray had begun to lift. On the 4th day, Taiho brought something to the storage room. It was a small pot with a tiny green plant growing inside, a mint seedling from the station's hydroponics garden. He had grown it himself over the past month. He set the pot on the floor in front of Lyra. She did not look at it. "This is mint," he said softly, knowing she could not understand his words. "My wife loved mint. She grew it in our kitchen. She put it in her tea. When she died, I thought I would die too. Everything hurt. Everything was dark." He paused and touched one of the small green leaves. "But I kept watering her plants. Every day I watered them. I do not know why. Maybe because it was something she had loved. Maybe because it gave me a reason to wake up. And one day, many months later, I looked at those plants and I felt something. Not happy, not okay, but something. A tiny spark of light in all that darkness." He gently lifted the pot and placed it in Lyra's hands. Her thin fingers wrapped around it automatically. "I am not going to tell you that the pain will go away," Taiho continued. "It does not go away. Not completely. But it changes. It becomes something you can carry instead of something that crushes you. And while you learn to carry it, I will be here. I will sit with you in the dark for as long as you need. Lyra stared at the small plant. Her eyes, which had been empty and distant, slowly focused on the tiny green leaves. She touched one leaf with her fingertip, feeling its soft surface. Something flickered on her skin. Just once, a small pulse of pale green light. Taeho's heart jumped. It was the first light she had made in 3 days. He did not react. He did not smile or celebrate. He simply sat quietly, giving her space. Over the next hours, more flickers came, small pulses of light, hesitant and weak, appearing and disappearing across her arms. She was not communicating. She was just feeling, letting the light return slowly, like blood flowing back into a numb limb. When Sumin came to check on them that evening, she found Lyra asleep on the floor, the small mint plant clutched to her chest. Her skin glowed softly with gentle patterns, like someone dreaming. Taeho sat beside her, his back against the wall, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. "How did you do it?" Sumin asked quietly. Taeho shook his head. "I did not do anything. I just stayed with her." Sumin looked at the old man. His clothes were wrinkled. His face was unshaved. He had not left this room for days. He had given up sleep and comfort and routine, all to sit beside a grieving alien child. "You understand grief," she said. It was not a question. Taeho nodded slowly. "Everyone does eventually. Grief is the price we pay for love. My wife taught me that. She said that the pain we feel when we lose someone is just the other side of the joy we felt when we had them. You cannot have one without the other." He looked down at Lyra's sleeping face. Her small features were peaceful now, the tension finally gone from her body. "Lyra loved her people," he said softly. "She loved her home. The pain she feels now is proof of that love. I cannot take the pain away, but I can make sure she does not carry it alone." Sumin sat down beside him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They just watched the child sleep, her skin glowing with soft light, the small mint plant rising and falling with her breath. "You are a strange man, Kim Taeho," Sumin said finally. Taeho smiled a small, tired smile. "I am just a janitor." "No," Sumin said quietly. "You are much more than that." The night passed slowly. Outside the storage room, the station continued its endless routine. People worked and slept and lived their lives, unaware of the small miracle happening in the forgotten corners of the lower levels. A child who had lost everything was learning to live again, and an old man who had once lost everything himself was showing her the way. The message arrived on Captain Yoon Dae-sung's screen at exactly 6 in the morning. He read it 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood. But the words were clear. The Coalition Council had learned about the alien child on his station. They wanted her. The surviving Villani specimen is to be transferred immediately to the Central Research Facility on Station Prime. Genetic samples must be preserved. Physical examination must be conducted. This is a matter of scientific importance. Cooperation is mandatory. Specimen, they called her a specimen. Dae-sung was 55 years old. He had commanded this station for 7 years. He had dealt with pirates, diseases, political conflicts, and dozens of other crises. He was a practical man. He understood that sometimes hard decisions had to be made, but something about this message made his stomach turn. He called Dr. Park Sumin to his office. "You knew about the child, Donner," he said. It was not a question. "For weeks, you knew. You did not report it." Sumin stood straight, her hands clasped behind her back. "I was conducting medical observation. I was waiting until she was stable." "That is not protocol." "No, sir, it is not." Dae-sung looked at her for a long moment. Then he sighed and rubbed his tired eyes. "Tell me about her." Sumin's professional mask cracked slightly. Her voice softened. "Her name is Lyra. She is approximately 10 years old by human standards. Her species was nearly destroyed 3 months ago. She survived alone in an escape pod for weeks before drifting to our station. She cannot speak with her voice. She communicates through patterns of light on her skin." She paused. "And she has bonded with our custodian, Kim Taeho. He found her. He saved her life. He has been caring for her ever since." "The janitor?" Daesung's eyebrows rose. Yes, sir. The janitor. The captain leaned back in his chair. He thought about the order on his screen. He thought about a child being called a specimen. He thought about what it would mean to take her away from the one person who had shown her kindness. The coalition wants her for research, he said slowly. Genetic preservation. They say she is scientifically important. She is a child, Suman said quietly. She is scared and alone and grieving. She is not a specimen. Daesung looked at her sharply. Be careful, doctor. Those words could be considered treason. Then they are treason. Suman met his eyes without fear. I became a doctor to help people, not to deliver children to laboratories. The captain was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy. I will have to send security to collect her. Those are my orders. I understand, sir. Suman turned to leave. At the door, she stopped. Captain, she said without looking back, the order says to collect her immediately. It does not say you cannot take your time organizing the security team. Paperwork can be complicated. Schedules can be difficult to arrange. She left before he could respond. Daesung stared at the closed door. Then slowly he began typing a response to the coalition message. Received. Arrangements in progress. Will update on timeline. He did not mention that the timeline would be as slow as he could possibly make it. The security team came for Lyra 4 days later. They arrived at the storage room in the early morning. 3 armed officers with hard faces and official orders. Suman met them at the door, demanding medical justifications, asking questions about transport safety, creating delays wherever she could. But they pushed past her eventually. They entered the room. It was empty. No child, no old janitor, just a bare floor and a small pot with a mint plant sitting in the corner. The security chief was furious. He demanded answers. He threatened Suman with arrest, with termination, with criminal charges. She simply shrugged. I am a doctor, she said calmly, not a prison guard. I do not know where they went. They searched the station for 2 days. They checked every room, every corridor, every storage space. They found nothing. Tai Ho knew the station better than anyone. He had cleaned every inch of it for 12 years. He knew the forgotten spaces, the unused tunnels, the maintenance shafts that did not appear on any map. He moved through the station's hidden skeleton like a ghost. Lyra wrapped in a blanket on his back, her small arms tight around his neck. He told her stories as they hid in the dark spaces between walls. He told her about his village in Korea, about the mountains and the rivers, and the way the cherry blossoms fell in spring. He told her about his wife, about her laugh, about the way she would hum while cooking dinner. Lyra did not understand the words, but she understood the tone. She understood that this man was keeping her safe, even though it cost him everything. On the 3rd day they found him, not through searching, through betrayal. Someone had seen him enter a ventilation shaft and reported it. Security surrounded the exit and waited. When Tai Ho emerged carrying Lyra in his arms, they were waiting for him with weapons raised. Put the child down, the security chief ordered. You are under arrest for obstruction, for violating coalition orders, for harboring an unauthorized alien. Tai Ho looked at the armed officers. He looked at their weapons. He was an old man with a bad back and tired bones. He had no training, no strength, no way to fight. But he did not put Lyra down. She is not an unauthorized alien, he said quietly. She is a child. Her name is Lyra. She is 10 years old. She likes to draw pictures and play with plants and learn new words. This is not a debate. Put her down, now. Lyra's skin flickered with fearful patterns. She pressed her face against Tai Ho's shoulder, hiding from the angry men with weapons. Her small body trembled. Tai Ho held her tighter. No. The security chief stepped forward. Old man, do you understand what you are doing? You are a janitor. You are nothing. You have no power, no authority, no importance. The coalition has ordered this child transferred. You cannot stop them. You cannot protect her. You are wasting everyone's time. Tai Ho looked at him calmly. You are right. I am nothing. I have no power. I cannot stop you. He paused. But I can refuse. The chief's face darkened. Refuse? And what will that accomplish? Maybe nothing. Taeho admitted. But when you take her from me, you will have to take her from my arms. When you put her on that transport ship, you will have to do it while I am watching. And when she cries, you will have to hear it. His voice was still quiet, still calm. I am an old man. I will not live much longer. I have nothing left except the knowledge that I tried to do what was right. If you want to take her, you will have to drag her away from someone who loves her. And you will have to live with that memory. The security officers shifted uncomfortably. They had expected resistance, maybe even violence. They had not expected this. This quiet, stubborn dignity from a man who had already accepted that he would lose. This is foolish, the chief said, but his voice had lost some of its hardness. Yes, Taeho agreed. Love often is. They took him. They put him in a holding cell. They took Lyra to a medical bay where doctors examined her and prepared her for transport. But something had changed. The security officers who had arrested Taeho spoke quietly among themselves. They talked about the old janitor who had refused to let go, about the child who had cried silently, her skin flickering with desperate light as they carried her away. One officer, a young woman named Han Bo-ra, went home that night and could not sleep. She kept thinking about the fear in the child's eyes. She kept thinking about the old man's calm voice. I am nothing, he had said, but I can refuse. She made a decision. The next morning, she walked into Captain Yoon Dae-sung's office. Sir, she said, I would like to file a formal complaint about the treatment of the Villani child. Dae-sung looked up at her. His face was tired and troubled. You would risk your career for this? Bora thought about the old janitor in the holding cell, about the child alone in the medical bay, about what kind of person she wanted to be. Yes, sir, she said. I would. Dae-sung stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he smiled. So would I, he said quietly. So would I. In his holding cell, Taeho did not know that his small act of refusal was spreading like ripples in water. He did not know that people were starting to question, to doubt, to resist. He only knew that somewhere on this station, a little girl was scared and alone. And he hoped with all his heart that somehow she knew he was still fighting for her. The official reason was lack of evidence for serious charges. The real reason was much simpler. Captain Yoon Dae-sung had received hundreds of messages from station personnel, all asking about the old janitor, all supporting him, all questioning the orders from the coalition. The captain made a quiet decision. He delayed the transport ship. He filed paperwork errors. He invented technical problems. Every day he bought was another day of hope. When Taeho walked out of his cell, he did not go home. He went straight to the medical bay. The guards at the door hesitated when they saw him. They had heard the stories. They knew who he was, what he had done. One of them, a young man with kind eyes, stepped aside without being asked. Room 7, he said quietly. She has been asking for you. At least we think she has. She keeps making the same light pattern over and over. Taeho nodded his thanks and walked inside. Lyra was sitting on a medical bed, her knees pulled to her chest. The room was clean and white and cold. Machines beeped around her. Doctors had been running tests, taking samples, treating her like an object to be studied. When she saw Taeho, her entire body changed. Her skin exploded with light. Brilliant patterns raced across her arms and face, colors Taeho had never seen before. She jumped off the bed and ran to him, throwing her thin arms around his waist, pressing her face against his stomach. Taeho knelt down and hugged her back. He felt her body shaking with silent sobs. He felt her relief and her fear and her joy all mixed together. I am here, he said softly. I am not leaving again. I promise. After a long moment, Lyra pulled back. She looked up at him with her purple eyes, and then she did something she had never done before. She raised her hand and touched his face gently. Then she pointed to a data pad on the medical bed. She walked over, picked it up, and brought it back to him. On the screen was a message, written in shaky, imperfect letters. Taeho, stay, please. He stared at the words. She had learned to write. In 10 days of loneliness and fear, she had learned human letters just so she could say his name. His eyes filled with tears. He was not a man who cried easily. He had not cried when his wife died, not in front of anyone. But now, looking at those simple words from a child who had lost everything, he could not stop himself. I will stay, he said, his voice rough. I will always stay. The days that followed were different. Dr. Park Soo-min arranged for them to have proper quarters. A small room with 2 beds, a table, and a window that looked out at the stars. It was not much, but it was home. Tai-ho went back to work. He had to earn his keep on the station. But now Lyra came with him. She followed him through the corridors, watching him clean and repair and maintain the station's endless systems. At first she just watched, but soon she began to help. The Vellani, it turned out, had been master engineers. Their civilization had built things that other species could barely imagine. Machines that sang, crystals that stored memories, ships that could fold space like paper. Lyra had grown up surrounded by technology. Even as a child, she had learned the basics of her people's craft. And now, surrounded by human machines, those memories began to wake up. One day, Tai-ho was struggling with a broken air filter. The machine was old, patched together many times, and something deep inside it had failed. He had been trying to fix it for hours. Lyra watched him work. Then she stepped forward and pointed at a small component buried deep inside the machine. Tai-ho looked at where she was pointing. He had not even noticed that component. It was a tiny valve, hidden behind layers of wiring. He pulled it out. It was cracked. Lyra took the broken piece and examined it closely. Then she walked to the maintenance supplies, picked up several small parts, and brought them back. With quick, precise movements, she assembled something new, something better. She handed it to Tai-ho with a shy smile. He installed it. The machine hummed to life, running smoother than it had in years. Tai-ho looked at Lyra with amazement. How did you know how to do that? Her skin flickered with patterns. She pointed at her head, then at her heart. She remembered. Her people lived on inside her. From that day on, they worked together. Tai-ho taught her about human machines. She showed him tricks and techniques her people had developed over thousands of years. They built a language of their own, mixing light patterns and hand gestures and written words. The station's maintenance improved. Machines that had been breaking down for years suddenly ran perfectly. Systems that had been failing stabilized. Other workers began to notice. They began to ask questions. The old janitor and his alien kid, they said. They fixed things nobody else could fix. Word spread. Soon people were coming to Tai-ho with their problems. A scientist whose research equipment would not calibrate. A pilot whose navigation system kept glitching. A cook whose food processor made strange noises. Tai-ho and Lyra helped them all. Soo-min watched this with wonder. She had spent her career studying alien biology, alien medicine, alien disease, but she had never seen anything like this. A human and an alien child, working side by side, healing machines and healing each other. One evening she visited their quarters. Tai-ho was teaching Lyra to write more complex sentences. The girl's vocabulary had grown rapidly. She could now express simple thoughts in written Korean and English. She learns faster than any child I have ever seen, Soo-min said. Tai-ho smiled. She is smart, much smarter than me. Lyra looked up and shook her head firmly. She wrote something on her datapad and showed it to Soo-min. Tai-ho is smart. Tai-ho is kind. Tai-ho is my person. Soo-min felt her throat tighten. Your person? Lyra nodded. She touched her chest, then pointed at Tai-ho. Then she made a pattern on her skin that Soo-min had seen before. 3 pulses of soft blue light. That pattern means his name, Soo-min said. Tai-ho. Lyra shook her head again. She wrote more words. Not just name, means family. In Vellani light language, there was no difference between naming someone and claiming them as family. When Lyra said Tai-ho in her native tongue, she was saying, the one who belongs to me. Tai-ho read the words. His old face softened with emotion. Family, he repeated quietly. Lyra crawled into his lap and rested her head against his chest. Her skin glowed with gentle, peaceful colors. Soo-min thought about the coalition order still waiting to be carried out, about the research facility that wanted to study this child like a specimen, about the cold, clinical future that awaited her if the politicians had their way. We cannot let them take her, she said suddenly. Tai-ho looked up at her. His eyes were calm but determined. No, we cannot. They are more powerful than us. They have authority, resources, ships. We have nothing. Taiho looked down at the child in his arms, at her glowing skin, her peaceful face, her small hands holding on to his worn shirt. We have something, he said softly. We have each other. We have this family we are building. And sometimes, that is enough. Suman wanted to argue. She wanted to point out all the logical reasons why this was hopeless. But looking at them, the old man and the alien child, she found she could not. Instead, she sat down beside them. Then we build together, she said, all of us. Whatever comes next, we face it as family. Lyra looked up at her and smiled. Then she reached out and took Suman's hand. A new pattern appeared on her skin, soft pink and gold, gentle and welcoming. She is giving you a name, Taiho explained. In her language. Suman felt tears prick her eyes. What does it mean? Lyra wrote on her datapad. Means the one who heals. Means family too. 3 people sat together in a small room, looking out at the stars. An old janitor, a scientist, and a child from a dead world. They had nothing but each other. But in that moment, it felt like everything. It was a large vessel, painted in the official colors of the galactic government. Armed escorts flew beside it. The message they broadcast was simple and final. We are here for the Villani child. Prepare for transfer in 6 hours. Captain Yoon Dae-sung received the message on his personal screen. He had known this day would come. He had delayed it as long as he could, using every excuse he could find. But time had run out. He called Tae-ho to his office. The old janitor came alone. He sat in the chair across from the captain's desk, his hands folded in his lap. His face was calm, but Dae-sung could see the fear in his eyes. They are here, Dae-sung said simply. In 6 hours, they will come for Lyra. Tae-ho nodded slowly. I understand. You understand? That is all you have to say? What else can I say? They are powerful. I am not. Dae-sung leaned forward. Then why do you look like a man who has not given up? Tae-ho was silent for a moment. Then he smiled, just a small curve of his lips. Because giving up would mean accepting that Lyra is alone, and I promised her she would never be alone again. The captain studied him, this old man with gray hair and worn clothes. This janitor who had turned his entire station upside down for a single alien child. You have 12 hours, Dae-sung said suddenly. Tae-ho blinked. Sir? I made a mistake in my response to the retrieval ship. I told them the transfer would happen in 12 hours instead of 6. It will take time to correct the error. Paperwork, you know. Very complicated. Their eyes met. Understanding passed between them. Thank you, Tae-ho said quietly. Dae-sung shook his head. Do not thank me. I am not helping you. I am simply making bureaucratic errors. What you do with those errors is your own business. Tae-ho stood and bowed deeply. Then he left the office. He had 12 hours to save his daughter. The station was a maze. Hundreds of corridors, thousands of rooms, endless tunnels and shafts and hidden spaces. Most people only knew the main paths, the common areas, the places that appeared on official maps. Tae-ho knew everything else. For 12 years, he had cleaned every corner of this station. He had crawled through ventilation ducts to replace filters. He had climbed into maintenance tunnels to fix broken wires. He had explored storage rooms that had been sealed for decades. He knew the station's secrets, its forgotten spaces, its hidden paths. Now he would use them. He gathered his small family in their quarters. Soman was already there, her face pale with worry. Lyra sat on the bed, her skin flickering with anxious patterns. Listen carefully, Tae-ho said. We do not have much time. He laid out his plan. He would lead them through the station's hidden passages, through spaces the retrieval team would never find. They would move constantly, staying ahead of the search until... Until what? Suman asked. We cannot hide forever. Eventually they will find us. Tae-ho nodded. I know, but I am not trying to hide forever. I am trying to reach the docking bay. The docking bay? There is nowhere to go from there. There are emergency shuttles, small ships for evacuation. If we can reach one, we can leave the station. Suman stared at him. And go where? We have no destination, no plan, no resources. We have each other, Tae-ho said simply. That will have to be enough. Lyra touched his arm. She pointed at herself, then at him, then at Su-min. Then she pressed her hand against her heart. Family? Taeho translated. Yes, we are family, and family does not leave family behind. They moved that night. Taeho led them through the station's skeleton. They crawled through dusty maintenance tunnels. They squeezed through gaps between walls. They climbed ladders that had not been used in years. Lyra was brave. She did not complain, did not cry, did not slow them down. She followed Taeho's every instruction, her small body moving through tight spaces that the adults struggled with. Her skin glowed softly, providing light in the darkest passages. Behind them, they could hear the retrieval team searching. Boots stomping through corridors, voices shouting orders, the station's security systems tracking movement, scanning for heat signatures, looking for anything out of place. But Taeho knew where the scanners did not reach. He knew the blind spots, the dead zones, the places where the station's age had created gaps in its surveillance. Hour after hour they moved. Su-min's legs cramped. Taeho's back screamed with pain. But they kept going. And then, at the 11th hour, they reached the docking bay. It was empty except for 2 security guards at the main entrance. The emergency shuttles sat in their bays, small and silent, waiting. Taeho signaled for the others to wait. He crept forward alone, moving through the shadows along the wall. The guards were looking the other way, watching the main corridor. They did not expect anyone to come from inside the walls. Taeho reached the shuttle controls. His old hands moved quickly. Entering the startup sequence he had learned years ago during mandatory evacuation training, the shuttle hummed to life. The guards heard the sound and turned. Hey, stop! Taeho did not stop. He ran back to where Lyra and Su-min were hiding. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the shuttle. Freeze! Do not move! Taeho kept running. The shuttle's door was open. Safety was just meters away. But then more guards appeared. They blocked the shuttle entrance. Weapons raised, faces hard. Taeho stopped. He looked at the guards. He looked at his family behind him. He looked at the shuttle so close but so impossibly far away. He had failed. After everything, he had failed. And then he did the only thing he could do. He stepped forward and placed himself between the guards and Lyra. You want her, he said quietly. You will have to go through me. The guard commander laughed. Old man, you cannot be serious. Step aside. No, we will arrest you again. This time you will not get out. Then arrest me. The commander's face darkened. Move or we will move you. Taeho spread his arms wide. He was an old man, thin and frail. He had no weapon, no strength, no power. He was nothing, but he refused to move. You can hurt me, he said calmly. You can arrest me. You can do whatever you want to me. But when you take Lyra, when you drag a crying child away from the only person who loves her, you will have to do it while looking at my face. You will have to do it knowing that you had a choice. You could have walked away. You could have pretended you did not find us. But you chose this. You chose to break a family. He paused. His voice was steady. I am nothing. I know that. But I am asking you, as one living being to another, to be merciful, to see this child not as a specimen, but as a person, to remember that before you were soldiers, you were children too. Someone held you when you were scared. Someone protected you when you were weak. All I am doing is what anyone should do. I am loving a child who has no one else. The guards were silent. The commander's weapon trembled slightly. Behind Taeho, Lyra stepped forward. Her skin glowed with patterns, words in her language that she had never used before. Then she wrote on her datapad and held it up for everyone to see. This is my father. He saved me. Please do not hurt him. Please let us go. We just want to be family. The commander stared at the words, at the glowing child, at the old man standing with his arms spread wide, ready to die for a stranger from another world. Long seconds passed. Then slowly the commander lowered his weapon. I did not see anyone here, he said quietly. We searched the docking bay and found nothing. The shuttle must have malfunctioned and launched itself. He turned and walked away. One by one, the other guards followed. Taeho stood frozen, unable to believe what had happened. Suman grabbed his arm. Move! Before they change their minds! They ran into the shuttle. The door closed. The engines fired. And as the Orion Deep Space Research Station fell away behind them, Lyra pressed her face to the window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there was a future. Unknown, uncertain, dangerous. But she was not afraid. Her father was with her. Taiho stood in his garden, his old hands deep in the rich brown soil. The morning sun warmed his back. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow. Cherry blossom petals drifted on the wind. This was home, a small farm in Gangwon Province, Korea. The same land where Taiho had grown up, where he had married his wife, where he had buried her under the apple tree that still bloomed every spring. He had never thought he would return here. The years in space had seemed like his forever, but life had other plans. Father, he looked up. Lyra walked toward him through the garden rows. She was 15 now, by human counting, taller than before. Her silver skin glowed softly in the sunlight. Her dark blue hair was tied back with a simple ribbon. She had changed in 5 years. She had grown stronger, more confident. Her Korean was fluent now. She had learned to cook, to farm, to navigate human society. She attended the local school through video connection, her face on a screen, her classmates thousands of kilometers away, but still her friends. But some things had not changed. She still made light patterns on her skin when she was excited or sad or thinking deeply. She still loved plants and machines and quiet evenings, reading beside Taeho. She still held his hand when they walked to the village market. She was still his daughter. Sumin's ship is landing, Lyra said. She will be here soon. Taeho smiled. He wiped his hands on his work clothes and stood slowly. His back ached. His knees complained. Age was catching up with him, but he did not mind. Every morning he woke up in this house with his daughter sleeping in the next room, felt like a gift. Dr. Park Soo-men visited once a month. She had left the station after they escaped, unable to stay in a place that had tried to take Lyra away. Now she worked at a hospital in Seoul, treating patients from dozens of species, but she always made time to visit. Family, after all, stayed together. They gathered on the porch as Suman's small shuttle landed in the field beside the house. The doctor emerged carrying bags of supplies and gifts. She hugged Lyra first, then Taiho, her eyes shining with happiness. You look well, she said to him. Country life suits you. It is quiet, Taiho admitted. I like quiet. They ate lunch together on the porch, simple food that Lyra had helped prepare. Rice and vegetables from the garden, soup made from a recipe Taiho's wife had taught him long ago. Green tea grown in his own small field. As they ate, Suman shared news from the outside world. The story of Kim Taeho had spread. At first it was just whispers among station workers. The old janitor who had defied the coalition, the child he had saved, the guards who had let them escape. But whispers became stories. Stories became legends. And legends changed the world. Other species heard about the human who had risked everything for an alien child. They heard about his quiet courage, his stubborn love, his refusal to treat Lyra as anything less than a person. The story touched something deep in beings across the galaxy. The coalition faced questions they could not answer. Why had they tried to take a child from her father? Why had they called her a specimen instead of a refugee? Why had they treated survival as something to be studied instead of celebrated? New laws were proposed, new protections for refugee species, new rules about how survivors should be treated. The change was slow, as change always is, but it was happening. And at the center of it all was a simple truth that Taiho had shown the galaxy. Kindness mattered. Compassion mattered. The choice to help someone, even when it cost you everything, mattered. They call you the Keeper now, Suman said, among the Vellani survivors. They have a word in their language for someone who guards sacred flames. They say you kept Lyra's flame alive when everything else died. Taeho shook his head. I just did what anyone would do. No, Lyra said quietly. That is not true. She stood and walked to the edge of the porch, looking out at the mountains. Her skin glowed with soft, thoughtful patterns. I have learned much about humans in these years, she said. I have learned about your history, your wars and your cruelties, the terrible things you have done to each other and to other species. She turned back to face them. But I have also learned about your kindness, your art, and your music. The way you love your children and care for your old. The way you plant gardens knowing you might not live to see them bloom. Her eyes met Teho's. My people believed that survival required strength, power, the ability to fight and win. When our world died, many of us thought that was the end. We had no power left, no strength. We were scattered and broken and alone. She walked back to Teho and knelt beside his chair, taking his weathered hand in her silver fingers. But you taught me something different, Father. You taught me that survival comes from connection, from choosing to love even when you have nothing, from holding someone's hand in the dark and staying with them until the light returns. Her skin glowed with the pattern that meant his name, 3 pulses of soft blue, the word that meant both Teho and family. I was dying when you found me, not just in my body but in my spirit. Everything I loved was gone. I had no reason to live, but you gave me a reason. You held my hand. You stayed with me. You showed me that I was not alone. Tears ran down her silver cheeks, leaving trails of soft light. From a single hand, I was reborn. Teho could not speak. His throat was too tight with emotion. He simply pulled Lyra into his arms and held her, the way he had held her on that first night so many years ago. Sumin watched them through her own tears. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, the fear, the danger, the impossible choices. All of it had led to this moment. An old man and his daughter embracing on a porch in Korea, surrounded by mountains and cherry blossoms and peace. Later that evening, after Sumin had left and the sun had set behind the mountains, Lyra sat at her desk and wrote in her journal. She had kept a journal since arriving on Earth, recording her thoughts in Korean. It helped her process her new life, her new world, her new self. Tonight she wrote something different. My people believed in the strength of stars. We thought that power was the source of life. We built great machines and beautiful cities and stretched our civilization across the light years. But we were wrong. The stars died. Our power meant nothing. Our machines could not save us. Our civilization crumbled to dust. What saved me was something much simpler. An old man with gentle hands and a warm coat. A human who had nothing but his kindness and his stubborn, foolish love. I used to wonder why he helped me. I was a stranger, an alien, a burden. He had nothing to gain and everything to lose. By every logic, he should have walked away. But humans do not operate by logic. They operate by something else, something my people never understood. They call it compassion. They call it love. They call it humanity. I do not know if there is a greater power in the universe. I do not know if gods exist or if fate has meaning, but I know this. In my darkest moment, when I was alone and dying in a cold escape pod at the edge of space, someone chose to help me. He did not ask what species I was. He did not care what I could give him. He simply saw a child in need and he responded. From a single hand, I was reborn. And if that is what humanity means, then I am proud to call myself the daughter of a human. I am Lyra, daughter of Kim Taeho, and I am home. Outside her window, the stars shone bright and cold. Somewhere among them was the dust of her homeworld, the ashes of everyone she had lost. But here on Earth, in this small farmhouse in the mountains, she had found something her people had never known. She had found family. She had found love. She had found home. And it had all started with one human who refused to let a child die alone. An old janitor on a space station, holding a stranger's hand in the dark, whispering words she could not understand but somehow felt in her heart. You are not alone. I am here. I will not leave you. From that single hand, a universe of kindness had grown. And perhaps, in the end, that was what humanity truly meant. Not the wars or the cruelty or the darkness, but the light. The stubborn, impossible, beautiful light that refused to die. The light of love. The light of hope. The light of one person choosing, against all odds and all reason, to care for another. From a single hand, she was reborn, and she would carry that light forever.